The days that followed my confrontation with Jason were some of the hardest I'd ever endured. I had made a decision, and I was determined to stick to it. If Jason couldn't or wouldn't give me what I needed, then I had to protect myself by pulling away. I couldn't keep waiting for him to change, for him to decide that I was worth more than a cold, distant marriage of convenience. So I did what I had to do. I ignored him. I stopped waiting up for him at night, stopped trying to engage him in conversation. I made myself scarce around the mansion, spending most of my time in the library or the gardens, places where I knew he wouldn't find me. And when we did cross paths, I kept my interactions with him as brief and as neutral as possible. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how much he had hurt me, but as the days turned into weeks, I could feel the strain of my resolve. Each time I passed him in the hallway, without so much as a glance, each time I heard him come home late at night and resisted the urge to go to him, it chipped away at the walls I had so carefully constructed around my heart. I missed him, missed the arguments, the tension, even the cold silences that had once driven me mad. But I refused to let that weakness show. Jason, for his part, seemed to notice the change. At first, he appeared relieved, as if my decision to distance myself had taken a burden off his shoulders. But as the days wore on, I began to sense a shift in him. He became more irritable, more withdrawn, his temper flaring at the smallest things. I caught him watching me sometimes, a strange look in his eyes that I couldn't quite decipher. But whenever I met his gaze, he would quickly look away, as if ashamed of being caught. It was clear that my absence was affecting him, but he was too stubborn, too proud to admit it. Instead, he threw himself even further into his work, spending long hours in his study or at the office. And when he was home, he avoided me just as much as I avoided him, as if we were both playing a game neither of us knew how to win. But despite the cold distance between us, I could sense the tension building. It was like a coiled spring, wound too tight, ready to snap at any moment. And I knew that when it did, there would be no going back. One evening, after a particularly long day, I decided to treat myself to a hot bath. The warm water was soothing, easing the tension in my muscles and helping to clear my mind. I closed my eyes, letting the steam envelope me, and tried to relax. But no matter how hard I tried, my thoughts kept drifting back to Jason, to the way things had been before everything had fallen apart. Just as I was starting to drift off, I heard a knock on the bathroom door. My heart leaped into my throat, and I quickly pulled the bathrobe around me, standing up as the door creaked open. To my surprise, it was Jason. He stood there in the doorway, his expression unreadable, his eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us said anything, the air between us thick with unspoken words. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the tension rising, that same tension that had been building for weeks. "Eve," he finally said, his voice low and rough. I tightened the robe around myself, trying to keep my composure. "What is it, Jason?" He hesitated, as if he was trying to find the right words, but then shook his head, his expression hardening. "We need to talk." I couldn't help but laugh, the sound bitter and hollow. "About what?" You've made it pretty clear that there's nothing left to say. He flinched at my words, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. But then he straightened, his pride keeping him from backing down. I know you've been avoiding me, he said, his voice tight. And I understand why. But we can't keep doing this. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to keep the anger from rising to the surface. You're the one who wanted this distance, Jason. You're the one who said you couldn't give me what I needed. So, why do you care now? His jaw clenched, and I could see the struggle in his eyes, the battle between his pride and whatever feelings he was trying so hard to suppress. I never said I didn't care, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat at his words, but I forced myself to stay calm, to keep the walls up. Then why are you here, Jason? Why now? He took a step closer, his gaze intense, but he stopped himself, as if he was afraid of crossing some invisible line. Because I miss you, Eve, he admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I miss you, and it's driving me insane. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The admission, so raw